So Star Wars Outlaws is exactly a month away from release, and I got to play 4 hours of the game about 2 weeks ago. Now for some context for those who haven't watched me before, or who haven't seen me talk about Star Wars, I love Star Wars. It's my favorite IP ever, despite the ups and downs of recent years. And as a longtime lover of video games as well, especially open worlds, it's been a very long-time dream of mine to have a big open world Star Wars game with multiple planets to explore, ground and space traversal. It's something I've wanted since I've started playing video games pretty much, and it just made too much sense. It had to be done eventually. So this was a game I've been looking forward to since it was first announced. What was it, like 3 or 4 years ago now? EA has also had a monopoly on Star Wars games with their exclusive license for the past 10 years, and while they made some good games, they were coming along very slowly, and most of them are multiplayer aside from the Jedi games. So I'm very glad that the exclusive license is finally done, as I'm sure we all are, and this is the first AAA Star Wars game in over a decade to not be made by EA. But going from EA to Ubisoft isn't exactly a step up. So naturally, there's been a lot of skepticism and concern surrounding this game. A lot of the promotional material that's been put out also hasn't looked the best, but I played 4 hours of this game, 3 on Tashara, which feels like one of the main planets, and the last hour was on Kijimi, and honestly, I quite enjoyed my time with it. It's a Ubisoft open world game, not too different from their other open worlds like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Watch Dogs. This is developed by Massive, who made the Division games as well, so it's not anything crazy, it's not going to be the next Witcher 3 of open world games or anything, but I had fun with it. Again, just having an open world Star Wars game like this has been a long time dream of mine, and they are calling this the first open world Star Wars game. I don't know if that's technically true, but it's definitely the first Star Wars open world game of its kind, like a true massive open sandbox. There hasn't been a Star Wars game like this before, and that aspect was my favorite part of what I played, just the world. Like I said, I played the first 3 hours in Tashara, and what I can only assume is just after the prologue. It was a little bit confusing because obviously I didn't get to play the game from the start. I was dropped into a save that seemed like it was already a couple hours in, but from a visual standpoint, the world looks really good, which is no real surprise with the game running on the Snowdrop engine. The Avatar game used the same engine and had a really good looking world too, same with the Division games. I couldn't necessarily discern the depth of how good it looked exactly, because for this remote event, I was playing the game through a stream on someone else's PC. It was really trippy, but because of this, the game was pretty blurry on my end. Even through that though, I could tell it looks good, and you can probably even tell just through this heavily compressed footage. Also, quick disclaimer, this is all my footage. It's not B-roll or anything, this is me playing. But getting to explore the open parts of this world on the speeder was really fun. I really enjoyed using the speeder, it's fast, it handles well. You can even use the Deadeye-like ability while you're on it. But what I also found impressive was the level of detail and the amount going on in the world. For Tashara and Kijimi, the more densely packed areas with lots of NPCs feel really immersive. The environments and architecture have a lot of detail, there's lots of conversations and people to talk to. A good example of this is I just went to this merchant to buy some items, when suddenly some stormtroopers show up trying to take a bribe from the merchant, and I get the option of whether or not to pay it. This wasn't even a quest or anything, it just randomly happened when I went to this merchant to buy and sell stuff, which was really cool. There's other little things to do, like gambling on races and arcade games. It feels very alive, and it's just really interesting to see the Star Wars universe in this kind of way, where you can freely explore it and see things in greater detail. I really like that each planet has a distinct look and environmental variety as well. It keeps things feeling fresh. And of course, as this is a big open world, there's lots of side content as well. I didn't get to do too much of it in my 4 hours. I was advised to focus on the main quest first, but there were a lot of little question marks on the compass, either with areas to explore or a side quest. These entailed things like speeder races, finding some kind of loot, or an actual little story questline. At the end of my playtime, I even got to play a game of Sabacc, the card game. It's no Gwent, but it was pretty fun, and I can see myself playing it quite a bit. Every open world game gotta have their own card mini-game these days, but this is all designed very similarly to other recent Ubisoft open worlds, so you probably know what to expect there. There's obviously some space exploration and combat as well, which I got to play a bit of too. The ship combat was pretty fun. I mean, it's fairly basic and doesn't feel too different from something like Battlefront 2, but it's still cool to have. Ship combat is a part of that Star Wars fantasy after all. Going from space back into a planet's atmosphere was done in a pretty smart way. You actually get to see the ship enter the atmosphere, and then as it goes through the clouds, it's basically a disguised loading screen, then into a landing cutscene, which, yeah, it is just a disguised loading screen. It's not like No Man's Sky where you can freely enter or exit the atmosphere seamlessly, but I much prefer this to something like Starfield, where it's just a straight up loading screen. I think it's a bit more immersive this way. I think what actually surprised me the most though, was how prevalent stealth was. Stealth is a genuine consistent way to play a lot of these missions, and it feels more beneficial than just running and blasting your way through everything. I think the absolute best comparison for stealth in this game is Watch Dogs. You have your companion Nyx, whom you can order around to do different things. It feels very similar to using your phone for hacks in Watch Dogs. For example, you can send Nyx to effectively distract and stun an enemy, like you could do in Watch Dogs with a hack, which allows you to run up to them safely and take them out without being detected. I use this a lot to pull off 1-2s, and it was really fun to do, but you can also have Nyx trigger explosives, retrieve items, even pickpocket. Again, all things you can do with hacks in Watch Dogs. Even the stun option on the blaster reminds me of the taser in Watch Dogs 2. The detection system felt consistent. The only thing I wasn't really a big fan of are the takedown animations. They look kind of goofy to me. In a lot of them, Kay just throws a single punch and immediately knocks the person out, which looks even more ridiculous on Stormtroopers, where she's one-punching them with her bare hand even though they have helmets on. It reminds me of one of the worst Star Wars action sequences in recent memory. Like, she could have at least used the blaster to hit them over the head and knock them out. That would be more realistic, but whatever. Stealth is genuinely important in some of these missions too, because if you get spotted sneaking into a restricted area for one of the crime syndicates, you're going to lose reputation with them. Gaining favor with the different syndicates is quite important in this game. Your standing with the syndicates can get you unique rewards and opportunities for missions. For example, if you gain enough trust with a syndicate, they'll let you walk right into the restricted areas no problem. In one mission, I got to choose which syndicate I wanted to steal a part needed to upgrade my blaster from. It doesn't seem to impact the story much, but rather the gameplay and different unique benefits and opportunities that open up to you. There's also this little lock-picking minigame you have to do a lot, either for unlocking doors or entryways, chests, etc. It's like a rhythm game where you have to time the button press with the beeps from the lock. It took me so long to figure out how this worked initially. I sat there trying to figure it out for a solid 5 minutes, and my demoist was desperately trying to help me understand it. But once I got it, I got a lot better at it, and I started doing it on my first try. You use this thing a lot, but it was pretty satisfying once I got really good at it. There's another mini game, kind of like Wordle, for slicing. You have to find the correct combinations of glyphs in an allotted amount of attempts. Again, I didn't really get it at first, but I eventually got the hang of it, and it gets even more advanced as you progress into the game. As for blaster combat, it's pretty simple for the most part, but still satisfying. You unlock and attain different firing modes that are effective against different enemy types. In one mission, I had to unlock the Ion mod, which is effective against shields and droids. When I played the later section of the game in Kijimi, my blaster had become fully automatic, so while you are limited to the single blaster, there does seem to be a lot of progression and upgrades for it. And you can also pick up other blasters like the E11 or a sniper rifle for temporary use. The Deadeye-like ability charges up over time where you can instantly take out multiple targets. It looks cool and it's fun to use. Movement feels pretty good too. You can sprint into a slide into a combat roll by double tapping the crouch button. There is some light parkour and platforming, not too dissimilar from Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor honestly. Very basic climbing sections and you get a grappling hook as well. Nothing too special. It is still better in the Jedi games I think, but the design is kind of similar. A lot of the combat is cover based. You can feel a little bit of the Division influence there, like with how the grenades work as well. But for the most part, it feels quite different from the Division, and again, really more similar to Watch Dogs than any other Ubisoft IP. Which I'm not really complaining about, I like Watch Dogs. But finally, let's talk about the story. I saw very little of it in the 4 hours I played. I saw a small handful of cutscenes, and again, I was playing out of order, so I didn't have the context of the whole story. So I really don't have much of an opinion on it yet. I didn't hate anything I saw, I didn't find it super captivating either though, but I was seeing such a small portion of it, so it's really hard to know. A lot of the cutscenes did use motion capture though, which is nice. since a lot of recent Ubisoft games haven't been using it as much. I thought the performances were solid. I don't know how to feel yet about Kay Vess as the protagonist. I need to see more of the story before saying anything definitive, but my expectations for it aren't very high, to be honest. It's Ubisoft's storytelling, which has been on a downward path in recent years, so I'm not expecting something on the level of the Jedi games, for example, in terms of story. I don't have a problem with the premise, really. I know a lot of people think that if you're not playing as a Jedi or a Sith with a lightsaber, then it's not interesting, but there have been a lot of games like that already, and this is supposed to be something a bit different, focusing on the scoundrel fantasy, which I really don't have a problem with. I like seeing stories from some of the more normal, less significant people in the Star Wars universe. It fleshes out the universe, and you get to see everything from the perspective of someone just trying to get by and survive in this world. It makes the Star Wars galaxy feel bigger and more grounded to me. My favorite Star Wars story in recent years, Andor, doesn't have any Jedi, Sith, or lightsabers, and it's brilliant. So I don't think every Star Wars game and story needs to have us play as a Force wielder with a lightsaber, but that's me. I did get a couple choices in some of the cutscenes. It didn't feel like a typical RPG where you have dialogue choices for everything. Instead, it seems like you only get choices for the big decisions, like choosing which crime syndicate to help and which one to screw over. Again, I'm curious if these choices actually have any ramifications in the story, or if it's all purely gameplay based. I didn't get far enough along to see the results of some of the choices I made, so I'm not sure. I'll admit, I was very skeptical about the game, and Ubisoft doesn't exactly instill the most confidence, but all in all, I had fun playing it. I know this game got a lot of negative reactions recently over the IGN footage they released, which did not look good. What I played looked and felt a lot better than that. I don't know if it was an older build of the game in that footage or what, but what I played was certainly more polished. Of course though, I'd strongly advise against pre-ordering in general, and wait to see what the game is like on launch if you're interested. Thank you for watching everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.